welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, Gene.
And we interview people in the animation industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We ask people on Twitter if they had specific topics they want us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Niki Lopez. Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Hey,
Hi,
everybody.
Nikki. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you two doing?
We're doing well, even though this episode will probably come out long after Halloween. This is our Halloween special because
I am so honored. I actually
well, maybe we'll push it. Maybe we'll push it closer to Halloween because you are the most Halloween-y person that
one would not think, but yeah.
No, not at all. Yeah, exactly. It's like, but I know
it.
I know you. I know you're all about the ghosts and the spookums and the
I am
haunteds.
They're my friends.
That's it's up for debate. But I think that other than that, you're also a showrunner and many other things. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Nikki, and I am currently the creator and showrunner of Santiago of the Seas on Nick Jr. And hopefully more things to come. There's some things that are cooking in my cauldron. So awesome. Yeah, hope to talk about that more. And yeah, I'm originally from Puerto Rico, born and raised, and I've been here in Los Angeles since I started my animation career, which was about 11 years ago. And yeah, I started at Nick, and I'm still at Nick.
What is really great about your career also is you started as a color stylist, right? And I think that's really, really awesome and inspiring because most of the time we hear showrunners that were either writers or board artists. So I think this is such an interesting journey for us to get acquainted with. But before we get to where you are right now, I want to know what was your relationship to art growing up? Were you always drawing, or when was the time when you realized maybe I can do something with art?
Sure. I definitely was a child that had a lot of issues focusing on stuff. My attention span was incredibly short. And yet it was always drawing. It was that hobby that I could always go to, and my focus would always be at 120%. And a lot of times, if I was watching a movie, an animated film, or a TV show, my imagination was kind of on hyperdrive. So I wanted to continue the story that I had just watched by drawing it myself. I didn't know it at the time when I was technically storyboarding. A 5-year-old, 6-year-old storyboarding. And yeah, it was just my favorite thing to do. My parents tried so hard to get me to do sports or join the Girl Scouts, and I was like, nope. This does not deserve. I know
all those lucrative things.
It did not deserve my attention. So drawing always won my heart, and it became my sanctuary growing up.
Oh, that's so sweet. Did you have how was school for you in for Rico? Did you have drawing classes, or how was cultivating art for you at the time?
In school it wasn't exactly the best. Oh gosh, I wish I knew how to translate it in English. We had this thing called grecas, and what they would do was give us this squared it was like a sheet of paper, and it had the whole grid system on it, and they would tell you here's the design you have to draw today. So you'd have to fill this little blocks to make that was it. That was the art class at school. It was very unfulfilling. So my mom found this incredible art teacher who after school I would always go and take art classes to kind of foster that skill. And her focus definitely was coloring and painting and all that jazz. So I didn't know it at the time, but that definitely helped a lot when I eventually became a color designer. So yeah.
That's really cool. Do you how was the discussion with like your family and kind of like picking a college and to go into art, I guess?
So my dad, he works in construction, and he figured, oh, she's keen on drawing, then she can be an architect. And that definitely wasn't something that piqued my interest too much. So there were a couple of CG movies coming out, and Pixar was so huge back then in particular that I think when I told my parents, like, no, I want to get into the animation industry, and they were quite fond of Pixar movies, they were like, oh yeah, totally, go ahead, we support it. So it didn't take a lot of convincing, I guess. They've been pretty swell in that respect. So
that's good.
So I had the blessing from my parents to pursue an education, specifically in computer animation. But I didn't last in computer animation too long, mainly because I grew so enamored by the previous side of things, by storyboarding and character design, that I wanted to improve my skills as an illustrator to potentially do that after graduating. I truly hated learning Maya. I feel too dumb for Maya, to be honest. And I respect so much anybody that crushes it.
Oh, it's like calculus. I don't
understand
it.
It wasn't for me. So I went down the illustration path.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That is so great. Was it a school in Puerto Rico?
No, I actually went to Ringling College of, well, back then it was Ringling School of Art and Design. It's now Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida, which was, it had a very good reputation, specifically for their computer animation program. So I ended up going there.
How'd you like it there?
I will be forever grateful for having the opportunity to meet my best friend there. But did I thoroughly enjoy my time at Ringling? I did not.
Right.
I didn't have the most supportive instructors. It wasn't my favorite experience. And I know I shouldn't say, look, if I could do it over again, I'll go elsewhere, because I feel like every decision that I've done in my life has led me to where I am today. But if anything, I certainly took away knowing what's the best way to mentor people and what not to do.
I mean, that's still valuable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Having gone through it yourself, you have a better idea of what not to do.
Yeah. Some professors there had an interesting way of critiquing. Fun story. I had done this assignment, and everybody pinned it up, and this one particular professor, which had quite the reputation for being very theatrical in his critiques, he he ripped my assignment from the wall, turned it into a paper airplane, and just launched it into the trash can. So, I mean, it takes a lot to trigger me. I feel like I have a very turn shit into flowers mentality. So I basically just said that like, it's fine. But yeah, he was an interesting dude.
What the fuck is wrong with that's a very insecure person.
It's just also like they're probably like finally they have this like class which is basically like an audience and they're like, this is my show now, I run this class. It's kind of sad because it's like, well, the good thing is that you were able to not pay that much mind to it and still go on to be like very successful. It's just kind of sad to see like teachers like that. It's like really easy to break like young artists like spirits.
Yeah, I think that there's just a lot of instructors that are I shouldn't say a lot, but there's certainly instructors out there that have a lazy approach to teaching. So they zero in on those students that come through already talented. The package is already there, and so they don't have a remote interest in investing their time to other students who paid buco amount of money to get an education. Like, no, I'm just going to focus on these individuals who are already uber talented and have their skills where I'd like them to be, and that's that. Then I can take credit saying like I was their professor.
I was gonna say it makes them feel good. That's what all they really want. That's a bummer. I think that happens a lot. And it's unfortunate. We haven't really heard anyone talk about that kind of experience specifically, but I would not be surprised if it's
very common.
Super common.
How would you say, how you talked about like you have a very optimistic personality. Do you feel like you have any like insights or like things that you do to kind of help you overcome kind of like these type of difficulties? Like, because it's like you're like in a moment of like hardship, I guess, and how do you kind of like turn it around, like, and make a good experience out of it?
Oh my gosh, back then, I don't know. I don't know if it has to do a little bit with my upbringing. I feel like in Puerto Rico, since we've gone through so much shit, and often the island and its citizens get treated like second class citizens. There's always like the demeanor of like, well, that sucks. How are we gonna move ahead? Like I feel like Hurricane Maria was an example of like the community had to take care of matters themselves because the government's response was just so slow. So there's just this. There seems to be a broad mentality on the island of like, can't be weepy in a corner. Gotta keep moving. Gotta get
shit done.
Yeah. I mean, at least that was my own personal experience, and definitely trying to find the best of things, or just have a good laugh about it when we don't know how to cope.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's healthy, but
I think it's good.
But I think that's like really important because like that's a skill that you had to use through school, but I think that's also a skill that you needed later also in your professional career.
Oh man, but I definitely had my weak moments throughout, with show running and all that kind of stuff.
But you can't. You're human.
This is true. I am not a
and so how would you kind of say you got your foot in the door of the industry? How kind of was that process for you from college to landing your first kind of like internship or like
I mean job? I'll be honest, it took a minute. One, because I graduated during the recession 2008. So when I graduated I was like, well, I got no job, I'm headed back to Puerto Rico. And in Puerto Rico I actually acquired a position as a graphic designer in an advertising agency. And I was just delighted because I thought, oh, people think that I have a level of skill that is worth employing, Because I definitely was feeling like, oh my God, those 4 years that I was in college. What did I do? I'm coming out of it empty-handed. But no, I got hired in this advertising agency, which was great. I mean, I definitely got to learn a lot about pitching. And I certainly had this mentality embedded into my mind of, you do something and you then let go of it rather quickly, because it's just the process of advertising and going through clients that need their material really fast, and then you have to move on to the next one. It's just such a quick pipeline that it becomes a little bit easier to let go of stuff.
Right.
As fond as I could have been of certain work that I did. It was an intense gig for sure. I was doing it for about 6 months, just because most of the days, I was staying there till very late, like 3 a.m, 2 a.m, trying to get that pitch done. And we were not paid overtime.
Oh,
that's good.
Really?
So,
that's good.
Like that bank.
Yeah, nice.
No, we were not. We were not.
Oh, you were
Oh, I
not.
thought you said you were.
No.
No, sorry. I need to enunciate.
That's the opposite. That's really bad.
No, it was pretty abusive in that sense. But yeah. So I left that world partially. I still freelanced a little bit. I was freelancing doing that. I freelanced doing inking and coloring for certain comics. And after a while of chasing checks, I got very tired. And I found out that there was this animation convention called Ctn Expo. I think it was their first year. And I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is my opportunity to finally meet with a recruiter and find out ways that I could form a part of the industry. So I used my savings and I flew to Burbank and met with a couple of recruiters. The one that resonated with me the most was definitely the recruiter from Nickelodeon. It triggered that feeling in me of like, I remember why I was so obsessed with Nickelodeon growing up. She just felt so approachable and so silly, and it had just like that Nickelodeon energy, without the slime. And that just
both
became
metaphorically and real.
Yes. I remember I worked so hard on that resume. I had to ask her too, like, what's the best way to get into the studio if I've never had an animation, if I've never had experience in the animation industry before. And she spoke so highly about the internship, and that just became the mission. I wanted to be accepted into its Nikternship program. I tried 2 times. First one obviously did not make it in. And then after that, I kind of, since I had met her, I asked for advice. Like, what would you like to see? Blah, 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 since she had already met me in person. And I integrated that advice into my next shot at applying. And I was accepted. I definitely played What a Feeling on loop. Oh God, I just couldn't believe it, because I was like, this is it. My dreams are coming true.
What a feeling.
And I started at Nickelodeon. It was summer 2010. I just lived for it. Like every single day, I had this whole approach of like, I have to prove to them that I don't know, I'm crucial to the company and they should never let me go.
Yeah.
So what concerned me though was that at the time, like Nickelodeon had all these DreamWorks properties like Kung Fu Panda, Legends of Awesomeness, and Penguins of Madagascar, and they didn't have their new building set up. So we were in a separate building. It was called the Penthouse. And I thought, holy shit, I'm in trouble, because I'm not going to get to network as easily as all the other interns. But this is where word of mouth comes to play. If you fucking kick ass with your production and you're always there for them, that word of mouth is going to spread. And my line producer and my production manager, who she's still a mentor to me, I love her so much, Joanna Soesta. Without her, she's great. I love her. I owe being in the industry to her, because she saw my resume. She's like, oh, this person is from Puerto Rico. We've never received a resume from somebody from Puerto Rico. I bet you she has a very interesting perspective to offer to this team. So women of color looking out for each other. I love her.
That's so sweet. I love that. This is so great. It's also great to know that it's like, it doesn't just come from the artistic side. Like, you also have to value the production side, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're nothing without production.
Exactly.
I say that all the time. Absolutely nothing. They're the glue that holds us together. So I value production so much, having been through production.
Yeah.
I respect it. So word of mouth is a powerful thing, and I guess I was lucky in timing, in the sense that there was somebody from the production team on the production that I was at that was leaving the company. So a PA position opened up, and they hired me there. Now, I knew I wanted to be an artist, but because I was exposed to such brilliant and inspiring designers, I was like, I am not there yet. And I definitely saw production as a school to learn how the industry works, how to better communicate, how to have a better gauge too of like, what exactly do I want to do? I see the storyboard artists, and their work is unbelievably good, and I wonder, like, oh, can I do that? And then I saw the designers doing spectacular work as well. So it definitely gave me some time to really figure out what I wanted to do. And 2 years later, I was at an interesting crossroads, because Fairly Odd Parents was coming out of a hiatus. So they were looking for an entirely new team. Most of the original staff was working on Tough Puppy. So they were looking for prop designers and cleanup artists and color designers. And I tried for everything. I was like, I got nothing to lose. We'll see, whatever sticks, I guess. The one test that I did not think I did well at all on, which was color designing, that was the one that they were like, oh, this is really good. We want you to join the team. But I should mention that prior to testing, Joanne had asked me if I wanted to be promoted to a production coordinator, but I had to accept it then and there. And I was like, but I have an opportunity to try out for a designer position. I really want to know if that's what I should be doing. And I had loved what I had done with production, but I guess follow your gut instinct.
Yeah.
So I did that. I took a leap of faith, and I was working on Fairly Odd Parents for a bit. I think it was all throughout season 9. And then when it was coming to an end, that's when Joanne, and again, this is why it's so important to take care of those relationships that you form in the industry. Joanne was now becoming the line producer on Harvey Beaks, and they were looking for staff, and she asked me if I wanted to become to roll off as a color designer onto Harvey. So I said absolutely, and Harvey was just such a fantastic place to be creatively fruitful. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
no, makes a lot of sense.
And Carl was so cool. I absolutely loved him as a showrunner, because he
talking about C.H. Greenblatt, just for people.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Gene. he was the kind of individual that truly valued each artist's perspective. He was like, well, how do you feel about this? Do you think that looks good? Okay, I'm good with it. Like, he just trusts the artist so genuinely. So I felt really happy on Harvey Beaks. It's such a great show. And I was so happy that I actually felt like I had time to work on my stuff. Like, I didn't feel too overwhelmed with the amount of work, that I was like, oh, I've got time to work on pictures, and you know.
Nice.
I did just that.
Do you feel like so you mentioned you were working in advertisement before, and that you learned a lot of stuff about pitching. What would you say? And it's actually really interesting too, because we've had Pedro, Eboli, and Carl, who both worked in advertisement before, and they also said the same thing. And I was going to ask you, what was your takeaways from advertising that you're using for pitching?
Presentation is everything.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. When we were pitching to clients in this advertising agency, it was all about packaging that experience. How can we sell that? Like, they're part of this world, this experience. So I kind of took that into my pitches. I certainly did that with Santi when I was working on the pitch Bible. I meticulously treated the layout like it was this old pirate treasure map. And I had written its calligraphy felt almost like that old inky kind of quality. It just had this whole aesthetic that you found it in a treasure chest. And more often than not, I think execs just get pitches that they've got, like, you know, images here and there, and it's all on a white piece of paper, and it just doesn't feel as precious. But if you give them something that you can tell it was you created a world, and that world, you can just, by giving it a glance, it catches your eyes, they're gonna invest more time in that. So it's about finding all those little tricks to lure them into your world.
That's really great. That's great to know.
Yeah. I think that, like, I mean, we've probably mentioned it here and there, but like, the more you can put of yourself and also like the spirit of your idea into the presentation, like, that'll go so far.
Yeah.
Because like, the executives are so sick of seeing just the same, like, white and 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, like you said.
Exactly.
So that's really good to know. I know. I mean, we were chatting a lot when you were pitching, and I remember, like, how hard you were. like you were, because that wasn't, you know, there was ideas before that too.
Yes, they're all in my graveyard.
Right. Are they in your graveyard?
How many of them did you pitch? Like, how?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I want to say about 4 or 5 of them that
it's a lot,
are no longer here. Well, they're kind of there. I feel like there were.
I was gonna say, like, would you want to bring them back ever?
I feel that there is about 2 of them that I might be able to resurrect, especially now that, you know, I've quote unquote proven myself as a creator and showrunner. So yeah, to be decided.
Actually, it's really good to hear, because I've heard on a talk, I think it was a talk that Gendy gave at Sony when he was talking about Primal, that it was like an idea he had, like, for a very, very, very long time, but he had to wait until he had, like, proved himself with, like, many shows before people would take a chance on Primal, because it was such like a different idea. So it's kind of like, so that would make sense. Like, if, like, obviously, like, some previous ideas, like, if they're not in the zeitgeist, like, just kind of like keeping them in a jar somewhere.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing goes to waste here.
Yeah.
No, definitely not. I would love to dig into that, the development process of Nick Jr. a little bit, because I think you're definitely our first showrunner that has a show that's a junior show, we haven't really gone into that world, and it's a big world. Like it's, we tend to only talk about the like 6 to 11 animated stuff, but man, there's a lot of money in junior. And but I know from knowing you and others as well, like the process of development is brutal, maybe worse.
Yes, it's I mean,
so
yeah,
let's unpack that.
Gosh, where to even start?
Well, so let's start with how, based on what you know about pitching 6 to 11, how is pitching junior different than that?
I mean, you definitely have consultants and the execs very involved every step of the way. For me in particular, because I have had no previous pre-K experience, they were there. They were definitely present. And they certainly brought forward after the show was taken, after the pitch Bible was taken into development. I think it was like there was a period of time where they were bringing forward like a selection of writers, like, oh, this writer has had experience working in preschool. We think it would be a good match, et cetera, et cetera. So eventually, once we found the writers that would, collaborate best with me, we kind of went into our own little bubble and focused on producing the show Bible and the pilot script and all that jazz.
Yeah, from what I've kind of learned about it, it's from the jump way more collaborative and like a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And
it's
like,
one of, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It is one of those situations where stay true to your vision, but you're going to have to compromise a lot of things. Because, I mean, Disney Junior has its brand, Nick Jr. has its brand, and I'm sure, what's the Cartoon Network one? Cartoonito? Cartoonito is defined. Yeah, they're defining their brand. So they are going to make sure that everything is checked off. So it feels like this is a Nick Jr. property. And it has that little glimmer. The characters have that little glimmer in their eyes that most Nick Jr. characters have. That's the kind of thing that they're looking at.
When you say little glimmer, you're actually talking about design, or you're talking
design?
About
Yep.
Oh, interesting. So even the design has a specific brand. I thought you were talking more like conceptually, but that's a really interesting thing to point out. Yeah. Kind of like now I kind of see it. I get with like Paw Patrol and like Shimmer and Shine. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure that there was probably, you might have seen it, but I'm sure there's a document of like things they like to see in their junior shows.
When you pitched the IP, did you pitch it as a preschool, or did you pitch it as a bridge or like a 6 to 11? Like, I was wondering, I'm asking this question because I was wondering if that was ever a question that came up. Like if they ever asked you like, oh, do you think we could make this preschool kind of thing?
Always bridge. As a matter of fact, before I started pitching, Nickelodeon was doing kind of like this road show of development to showcase the things that had, that were currently being developed. And the presentation that most excited me was the Nick Jr. one. I thought that the characters that they were showcasing, they were so unique and cool, colorful, whereas the big Nick ones, they didn't have that same kind of impact. So I made it my mission to get acquainted with the development execs over at Nick Jr. and I had an informational with them to kind of understand what they look for, what play pattern is, and yeah, that's sort of how that journey started. They saw that when I presented my pitches to them, like I would take, months to work on them. And then by the time I pitched something that they had told me, oh yeah, we were trying to see something that leans towards robots, et cetera, they had already found their project.
Right.
So after a while, one particular executive who I love dearly, she's like my fairy godmother. She basically told me, let's just have a conversation. Let's talk about some ideas that you might have, rather than you just going with one idea, taking a long time to develop it and then bringing it back to us. And she asked me like, oh, well, what were the things that you really liked when you were young? And I, was talking about how I was obsessed with pirates when I was little, because Goonies was my favorite movie. And she was like, oh, okay, that's really interesting, because they were also very interested in finding their pirate property for the longest time. And then I continued that. Yeah, I continued going off that tangent, talking about Puerto Rico and how we historically, there was this one figure that we had. He was known as El Pirata Cofresí. And he was a pirate that would take from the Spanish and the British, and he would give back to his community, Cabo Rojo.
Kind of like a Robin Hood kind of.
Yeah,
pirate.
when I told her, he's like a Robin Hood of the high seas, she was like, there's something there, run with it. And I want you to come back with a pitch in a month. So I used up all of my sick days and my vacation days on Harvey, and kind of went on this sabbatical back to Puerto Rico to kind of get. Dude, I went to the caves where supposedly Cofresí had buried his treasure. I went to write in the streets of Old San Juan, kind of formulating the magic of this world, what it would look like. And then I went to New Orleans to put all the pieces together, because they had a couple of pirate tours that I wanted to see if I could, learn a little bit more about that golden age of piracy. So after that whole marathon, I remember it was 2016, right before Thanksgiving, I sent my pitch to two executives, including the one that I had spoken to, and her reply back, it didn't take like an hour. She was like, oh, this is really good. And less than a month later, that's when they were like, oh, we want to develop this. So yeah.
Oh, that's super great. That's super awesome. I love that like you had this like long-standing relationship. That's awesome. That you were able to just kind of narrow into like what they were actually looking for at the time, and then really use the momentum to just kind of like really push for it. I think, yeah. Throughout
my entire journey, whether it was starting off in production and then as a designer, and then working with development and creating a show, it's all about these relationships, about really nurturing them and making sure you're in touch with these individuals.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And so like, so you were talking about like how you kind of like got the idea, how you kind of like talked with them and everything. How much of like, what are the steps in development? Kind of like once you finally have the studio that's like they're interested in your idea, and now you kind of start into development, right? Because like you have like this pitch packet, but then you have to kind of like go from here to what the studio actually greenlights, right?
Yes, correct. So we start fleshing out the characters a little bit more. We start putting all the pieces together in that show bible, the rules of the world, the characters. What's the formula, or what is known as the play pattern for the show? What are the things that when little kids are watching it and they finish the show, they're going to go back to their regular routine and they'll want to role play as that character? What are those things? Like, for example, Santiago has his compass. So how does he communicate with his compass? It projects a hologram. And what are those key phrases that he says? Like, adventure awaits me, heart. You know what I mean? Like all these little things that are sticky, that preschoolers will watch, and they'll repeat it with their friends when they're playing. Those are the things that you're kind of trying to flesh out through that process, all the while defining the look of the show. So we've reached out to a couple of character designers And we started to do some art for the world itself, for key hero props like the ship. And what was interesting about Santiago was in development for about a year and a half, and it moved very quickly. Like, no joke, we didn't even have the pilot animatic ready by the time they decided to greenlight it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. And there's pros and cons to the situation, because a massive con was, holy shit, we still have so much to figure out,
right?
For the show while it's in its first season, and that brought so many headaches.
Yeah, I bet that must have been like really tough.
Yeah, but we had the character designs ready prior to greenlight. We were doing the voice casting, and what was done before the pilot animatic came into existence was like a storybook version of that pilot script. And they have a consultant that sits with kids and reads the story. And it's really interesting because they put like a bunch of toys and puzzles around little kids to see if they're more interested in the story of Santiago, or would they rather go play with that cart? That's a little car.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I guess that's a way to check. I don't know.
Yeah. And throughout all of the first season, we would do research where we would play our animatics to a classroom of kids, and they had all sorts of toys around them. And we would measure, this episode is successful because none of the kids decided to play with toys, or this episode in particular is really weak around this part because this is when a certain number of kids decided to play with this puzzle. It is nerve-wracking.
I bet.
You're in these meetings, right? Or in these?
I was in a few of those. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's got to be so stressful.
But it was very stressful. But the cool thing about it is that I finally understood so much about creating a show for preschoolers, and almost like I don't know, I just have so much respect for it now, and I'm very precious about our audience, that I want to make sure that what we create for them is, it fuels their imagination, it gives them joy and confidence. I think it's so cool that we get to create a show for kids where they feel so inspired by certain characters that they want to role play them without feeling self-conscious, because sometimes that's the issue with 6 to 12. Like, I can't let my friends know that I'm watching this show because then they'll make fun of me, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yes.
So there's this purity.
Yeah 100%. Yeah, that's very true. I remember my nephew was like really, really into Paw Patrol when he was like a little kid. It was like, I was at Nickelodeon at the time, and my sister was like, can you get some Paw Patrol swag? Well, yeah. I'm like, I don't know if I can while I'm trying.
It was actually for her. She wanted it.
It's really true. Like, that's really, really sweet to like see that.
It's good that they included you in those meetings too, because I mean, and it's up to the person if they want to subject themselves to that, but that's not I was never included in focus testing stuff, and they didn't want me to be in it. Maybe that's for the best, but I think that it's nice to get those responses. The way that they explained it was, it's like they don't want the feedback. They don't want me to be affected by feedback that isn't actually relevant to them, which is fair. Because it's like, I might hear something from the kids or from the whatever they call it, like the curator, whatever, the person who's managing and moderating, the moderator. I might hear something from them that I might imprint and be like, oh, I gotta fix that, I gotta address that. But they might be like, that doesn't matter, that's not a real note. And so I get it, but I think it's probably pretty helpful to see, and it sounds like it was helpful for you to understand it.
Yep, it gives you perspective. And again, I had zero experience working on preschool content. So it definitely grounded me in terms of like, oh, this is our mission. Like this is this is who we're working for. And it was great too, when we were focusing, because we also do focus testing on the parents and get their 2 cents. So for the cultural specificity, it really helped gauge the things that were sticking to parents.
What was some of the biggest challenges in producing a Nick Jr. show?
Ooh, oh my goodness. There were a lot. I definitely was consistently put in a position to prove myself.
Sure.
Especially this being my first show. There were executives that I was working with who were veterans, and we didn't meet eye to eye multiple times. And because they were veterans and they had a name for themselves, the leadership at the time, not the current leadership at Nickelodeon, but the leadership at the time kind of like leaned more towards the directions of what this veterans would say, which was hugely problematic because it was my show, and it was about, you know, fulfilling that vision and that cultural specificity. So I think being met with that kind of resistance definitely made me feel a lot of times like, am I meant for this? Is my voice worthy of being listened to? You know, I definitely, I don't know, I just had to deal with a lot of gaslighting, mansplaining.
Oh boy,
I was in multiple situations, if not most of a lot of episodes during season 1 when they were going to be launched, when the brainstorming sessions were supposed to become you know, to start. I was not looped into those meetings, so didn't help that the production was bi-coastal too. So because my writing team, and I would log in through, you know, I guess the whole work from home situation wasn't so jarring to me because I was already doing that with you know, the show early on during season 1, it being bi-coastal.
Sure.
But you know, I feel very fortunate now with a second season. The culture on the show is a lot healthier. It's truer to that bridge vision that I had. So we're taking some chances during season 2, definitely exploring more of Latino Caribbean lore, showing that heroes have a bounty of vulnerabilities, and they make errors too. There's nothing, I mean, it's so important to give kids heroes that they can relate to, so they don't have this complex upon their lives, like, well, I have to be absolutely perfect like a robot and not feel sad. Like, that's not healthy. So so that's what we're trying to do this time around.
No,
that's really great. When you were talking about that you were I forgot the word you used, tested, or like you had like you had to prove yourself, kind of what
oh, you had to prove yourself?
Under what kind of forms can you like elaborate on that? Would you say it's like on design? Would you say it's like on story? Would you say is it more like you were talking about, like sometimes you were out of the loop with the emails and stuff? Or
sure. So I guess I can break it into departments. And the side of design, I felt like I was pretty trusted for all the decisions. Just because the other execs that were there, they weren't as visually savvy. They didn't have really like the design background that I had. So there was a level of trust. But, you know, I remember when we had our storyboard reviews, you know, I took it upon myself to, I just never want to seem like I'm talking out of my ass. So I would just study the craft with storyboarding and shot selection and this and that, just to make sure that I could be as educated as possible when giving a note and not getting like on my storyboard artist nerves. Plus, I had an exec that was always like, well, give me the note. Give me the note. What's the note? I'm like, okay, I will give you the note. And I would come prepared the following day for our reviews with my notes. And then when I would get a note, I was questioned all the time, like, well, are you sure about this note that you just gave, like right in front of the other people in the room? And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah. God. That's really tough. Oh, no. Yeah.
So exhausting.
That was a fun one. So little incidents like that were moments where I was like kind of thrown into the Thunderdome, like, well, I'm a showrunner, but I guess I'm not really respected as a showrunner.
So this might be a loaded question, but like, how do you deal with that internally? Like, where do you pull from to face that kind of stuff? Because I think that that would be a lot for people. For some people, that would be too much, and they just wouldn't want to deal with it, and I wouldn't blame them. But I think it takes a lot to push through.
I started collecting receipts because I figured these would come in handy one day.
Interesting.
That was.
You mean like emails and not like actual
emails
receipts.
And just exactly. Emails and just. I mean, it will sound like almost journaling, like on this day at this time in this meeting. This is what happened, and just rather than be emotional about it, be very factual.
That is that is such a smart,
because nobody I you know, I'm grateful for the individuals that were able to get me to where I am. Absolutely. Like I don't want to be poo-poo towards that, but there were certain attitudes that could have been better. And there were a lot of times where I would voice my frustration to these mentors that were presented to me, and I was just not heard. It was almost shrugged up like, oh, she's a millennial. Those millennials, they're always complaining. They're always so emotional about this and that. So
Jesus Christ.
The healthy way that I could just exercise the demons, so to speak, was just pausing, writing it down, and that was that, you know. And I mean, and it's frustrating, right? Because you want things to be right off the get-go, but more often than not, that wasn't the case. And I really, at the time, you know, rather other than finding personal release, just writing things down, I put my energy into taking care of my crew. I didn't want them to deal with any of that, so I was kind of like, hit me but not that kind of thing. I just wanted them to be as happy as they could. Well, you know, they're investing their time on my show, so I want to show them that they're valued. So my crew and protecting them became my priority. And if for example, if I wasn't being appreciated when I was giving, say, for example, notes on the writing side of things, then I was going to exude all the passion in the world and all the dedication to the visual side of things. I was going to make sure that, given the budget and in the realm of preschool, I would make the show look as best as possible, you know, as something that I would have wanted to see when I was little.
I see.
That's great. Yeah, I really like that bit of advice. I think that I would have never thought to do that. I mean, I definitely keep emails, and I would definitely go back to certain things occasionally, but I think especially if you're a woman or a POC, I think if you're going to get into development, you probably got to keep those receipts, and you got to keep those conversations in mind, because man, I'm sure there's so much condescending bullshit. Even me, with my perspective, there were situations that were so toxic and insulting that I'm like, Gene will remember that. Like in the Walking Dead games, it's like you have to remember, because those things will come back up later, and you're like, you just have to bring them up and be like, yeah, we already talked about this, and it was in, like, the conversation didn't go well, or you know, you told me to do this, and you see now what happens. And it's like, it's a constant battle, and people will say things to you that they don't even fully understand, or they don't understand how it comes off, or they don't understand how much it affects the long term. I don't know. It's a whole thing. Neither of us can give examples, but
it's really hard because like, I also had like experience with a producer that wanted to like go forward with my idea and like pitch it around and stuff. But even at a producer level, like there were like lots of moments like you're talking about that, like I was left out of the loop. They like picked a writer without talking to me about it, or like, and then it's like, well, this is the script, now do a storyboard. And it's like, this is the first time I read the script. This is supposed to be my idea, and like this doesn't reflect what I thought about the show, or like well, I'll do. And then there's like, I think something that's like really tough when developing shows is like always trying to be very clear with communication, because there were like a lot of moments when I was just like, well, if they're making all these decisions and asking me to do the boards, then I was like, well, I'll do the boards and I'm out. That like, it's got, but then it's like, no, they actually wanted to have me in the pitch just to show that they had a woman creator, and then I was just like, and then it's like, and then it's kind of getting on the same wavelength of like, and then there was like a big miscommunication because they were like, well, why are you leaving the project? I'm like, I thought you just did it. What, So it's like it's really tough being really like precise with what everyone is supposed to do, and making sure everybody's on the same page, and like who's taking those decisions and who's doing what. And it's like also very, in my experience, it was just also so very easy for, if you don't have someone looking out for like payments and deadlines and stuff for work to kind of bleed out of those like initial parameters, I guess. It's very tricky. I think, well, for me, I was on my own at the time. Did you have a lawyer or someone that was kind of helping you out with all that stuff?
Yes, I had a lawyer. And I would definitely ask him, like, is this normal? It's like, oh, this is
you're right.
Yeah, they were always like, this is very strange. I've never seen anything like this before. Well, what am I supposed to do
now? The worst is when they don't know what to do with it. You're like, shit.
Yeah, and because of that experience, I definitely was like, well, I need to be sure that I'm super protective next time around. So I ended up shopping around for agents.
And nice. That's so nice.
Yeah. So they can make sure that the field is clear, so I can walk gracefully through without suffering any mishaps.
That's a good way of putting it.
Because that's the thing too, is like what I learned from my experience with that particular experience was just like, it is so invaluable to have someone on your side that knows the business and that you can ask the questions to. Because it's such a tricky business in terms of like expectations.
Absolutely.
And like clear and expecting, So you ideally just want to focus on the creative and make sure that you're doing the best show possible without having to get so lost in the politics and shadiness at times. What did you like, because you had to kind of learn a bunch of about politics, right?
Yes.
Like there's no way you can just like show around. And like, did you read books? What kind of, or who did you talk to? What were the resources that you went to in order to build that knowledge?
Oh my goodness. No joke. Shout out to Jorge Gutierrez. He is my Obi-Wan Kenobi. Find your allies in this industry. I remember I had reached out to Jorge and Sandra, and they took me out to dinner, and it was just such an incredible feeling to find that sanctuary. Like, oh my gosh, thank you for shining the light throughout this dark cavern, because I don't know, am I doing it right and I'm doing it wrong? So that's what helped me a lot. Just having that person there to talk to, that kind of stuff. I'm forever grateful for Jorge and Sandra. for
yeah, he's done a lot for a lot of people.
That's so amazing.
Super. Well, anyway, listen to his episode on Creative Block. So you are a big ghost and haunted place enthusiast. What kind of draws you to that world?
To the otherworldly? I feel like I'm always going to my upbringing. But yes, my upbringing.
But that's
it's my upbringing. My mom grew up in an area of Puerto Rico known as San Germán. And San Germán has this underground tunnel system where there's all sorts of stories that pirates used to escape through there. And then there's a bunch of ghost stories. I had my grandma's sister, she lived in this home where she would see apparitions of this ghost outside of her yard the whole time. And she also had all these magazines. It was like, they were called like Enigma. That was basically like Puerto Rico's National Enquirer, I think is what that magazine is called, with stories about UFOs and all that kind of stuff. But basically what I'm trying to get at it is, when I was little, that's the kind of stuff that I grew up on, like hearing all these stories about ghosts and seeing all the stuff about UFOs, and walking through these cobblestone streets, hearing about how this building has the spirit of X, Y, and Z. So I was enamored by the other side. My little brother too. I remember when we were really, really little, we shared a bedroom. We had a bunk bed. And he would wake up crying in the night because he said that there was this apparition of a ghost that was standing by the door watching him. And being really little, like I would hear stuff like that. I'm like, I don't want to, I like hearing the story. I don't want to see the ghost. I've always, since then, I always cover myself with my blankets like a cocoon. Because I'm intrigued, but I don't actually want to see an apparition. But I just love the stories that come with ghosts and in haunted places. I'm obsessed with history, so it's kind of like the shadow of history, right? Talking about ghosts. Into my later adult years, me and my boyfriend, whenever we vacation, we make it a point to bring like our ghost hunting gear.
I feel like you're always in some extremely haunted location.
Yes, we are. It's fun.
So funny.
I'm like, hey, yeah. What do you kind of hope to experience when you're out there?
Oh gosh, I definitely don't want to see an apparition.
Yeah, because if you don't want to see it, then what are you hoping to get?
It's a certain feeling. We do bring our little gadgets where we pick up, like electromagnetic energy and all that jazz. Okay. But sometimes I think the intuition can be a stronger device to I probably sound so crazy. I'm gonna
no, I think there are a lot of people that are
oh my gosh. People are gonna be like, okay. But there was one instance in San Diego. This was before I met my boyfriend, so I went alone. I have a tendency to get myself into very interesting haunting situations alone. I went to this ghost hunting event, and it was this old historic house, not the Whaley house in San Diego. It was a different house, not too far away from the convention center, actually. And it was past midnight. They leave you inside this place to do ghost hunting. And no joke, no joke. I certainly saw things move that shouldn't have moved. Like everything, the windows were closed. There was no way for the wind to come through. They were old toys. There was nothing like, they weren't like Hot Wheels that you pulled them back and they just run on their own. So seeing things move on their own, and then sense, like all of a sudden, if there's the smell of an old cigar, or this fragrance of like old rose perfume, that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that I always prefer to experience. I would like to have, well, actually I did have I did have a situation where I heard whispers in my ear. I attended a seance at the Chateau Marmont on a Halloween.
Oh yeah.
But then the lady that we were with, who's fantastic, by the way, she was telling me like, you can't be afraid of seeing spirits. I'm like, I don't want to see spirit. And she took me to a room where there was this old mirror, and she sat me in front of there, and she was like, just be calm and tell me what you see. And I kept, the entire time I kept my eyes closed. I just didn't know. I didn't want to see anything. I'm okay with the smell. I'm okay with the sound.
That's really funny.
But no apparitions, please.
That's so funny. I don't know if you, I don't know. I don't want to break the magic for you, but if you're ever interested, I read like a really interesting book called Psychic Blues by a guy who was like a medium, like a psychic.
Okay.
And he kind of like debunks a lot of stuff. So it's kind of like the
psychology behind it and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I mean,
it's not like extremely well written.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like it's probably, you know.
Yeah, I tried to go into all those instances in a very critical fashion, like, oh, this is probably why that happened. Right. So reading something like this, I actually appreciate, because then I could be even more critical, like distinguishing whether is this for real or is my mind just playing tricks on me, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I love that stuff too. I love that stuff, but I'm kind of like you. I'm like, I don't actually want to see anything. Like, I just want to make sure that, you know, it's like fun things that happen, but they're like, there's always like an explanation for
right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I'm way too rational about things, and it's like I desperately want to be proven wrong, and I would love to see some fucked up shit that like, so that I have a story and so that I can be a little more open-minded. But it's like, I know I don't trust my own mind enough, and I know that it will play tricks on me. Like you know, things will fool my eyes all the time. And if I was already in a situation where I know that it's quote unquote haunted or whatever, then I would just project that much more. And I remember we stayed in a hotel. I guess it was a hotel in San Diego, and you might know the name, Nikki. I don't remember, but it's a hotel that is known to be haunted, and it's like an old house. It's like an old mansion. I remember we talked about it a while. This is a long time ago.
Oh! Is this the one that's right next to Balboa Park?
I think so. Yes.
Because it's no longer a bed and breakfast. I think they just shut it for like wedding events and all that jazz, which is unfortunate, because it felt like you were actually staying at the haunted mansion.
Yeah, dude.
It was like coolest bed and breakfast.
Yeah. So yes. So I remember. I can't remember the name, but yeah, there's a used to be a bed and breakfast by Balboa Park, and we stayed there around the time of, I think, Comic-Con. And I knew, it's got a vibe, and it's old and creaky, and there's always weird breezes from somewhere. But,
it's so cool.
Yeah, but like we stayed in this room, and I remember being this is more just showing how my brain works, because like I went to the bathroom, and while I'm in the bathroom, I saw this light like hit the window, or something like that. Oh, I saw a figure kind of pass by the window, and I was like, oh man. I was like, man, we just got here. Am I already like seeing shit? And like in that moment, I definitely could have accepted it and like, you know, whatever. But I was like, no, hold on. And so I investigated, and I opened, because I was like, we're on the second floor. There's no way that there's somebody outside. And I opened the window, and there was like a road just far enough that if a car passed by and its headlights were on, it would like have this shape come across the glass. And so I was like, oh, that's probably it. But I really wanted it to be something so that I could walk away with like the story and have like, but I was like, no, life is boring. It's like everything is just a light at,
Have you heard of it's this haunted museum. There's a haunted museum in Las Vegas, which is the one experience that has absolutely terrified me is that museum. It's run by that, what's the name of that guy? He's the broy guy that's always like harassing the ghosts. Him, yes, he has a museum full of the most insane cursed objects. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's energy, right? So I do think that there's a very strong energy attached to a lot of those objects, traumatic objects. And it's just one of those things that when you walk out, it's, you need like, I don't know, you need to listen to like Enya on loop or something just to purify your spirit. But if you're ever looking for a good scare and for a vibe that definitely doesn't feel grounded, my recommendation would be that place, because why not? When in Vegas.
Oh my God.
When in Vegas, check out some ghosts. Do you think that do you have projects that you want to put that kind of stuff into, that kind of inspiration? Yeah,
absolutely. That's actually what I'm currently cooking on.
Nice. I figured.
Yeah, I know
how much it means to you.
I love that.
Oh, it means the world. It's one of those things where it's like I have the wholesomeness of Santiago, and then it's like really fucking dark on this other show that I'm doing.
Oh, okay.
No, not a junior show. It's Big Nick. Currently knocking on wood that we are bathed by that beautiful green light, and this project gets to see the light of day.
Kids horror is so hard to come by.
It is. So that's what I'm currently doing, and I'm very excited. I want to share the scary things that I love to the world.
Yeah, I love that. That's so fun.
We actually addressed most of the questions that we got on Twitter, but we love to ask about creative block, and this question from @DorkKnightRyan is, how do you balance your work art life with your home art life? Do you feel burnt out by the time you get home and dread picking up your stylus pen?
Oh man. Okay. So I feel like, especially with the whole work from home situation, this art life and home art life has merged together in a sort of Brundlefly amalgamation.
Put a shotgun to it.
Yes, exactly. I need to master the art of balancing the two. If I'm being super honest, I find it hard to pull away from my Santi demands to do my, because Santi is so personal to me, and this other project that I'm working on, it's so personal to me. So my energy is absorbed in those two realms.
Well, I mean, how much art do you have to do as showrunner of Santiago at this point?
I mean, I'll do revisions here and there. With the other project that I have in development, I definitely went through a lot in terms of, because I was a color designer. That's kind of like the thing where I'm like, I need to do my take on this. So anytime that things come through where I have to, give my notes on the color scheme, et cetera, I definitely go into it, and I love it so much. So I'll just play around and try different choices. Painting is my favorite thing.
Yeah, makes sense. You talked about it a little bit with the stuff you're working on, but what are your future goals for your career? For your life?
I mean, gosh, I hope I'm able to, not I hope, my goal is to continue to show run. A big thing for me is being supported. I mentioned that I like to look after my crew. So I'd like to reach a point later on in my career where I serve as a mentor, bringing forward new voices, because I'm just so grateful with this one particular executive in Nick Jr. that she was the one that I sat down with, and she was like, well, what mattered to you? And she just gave me so much incredible guidance and allowed me to let go and be myself with my ideas, that I want to make sure that I can embody that in the future and carry that torch for others. One day when I can be like, okay, I did my thing show running, now I can help bring others up to create and show run as well. I guess I want to be an Obi-Wan Kenobi, much like Jorge was to me too, for other. Yeah,
that's so sweet.
Yeah, you want to pay it forward. I get that. I think that's good. Well, is there anything you want to plug or promote while you're on our show?
Please watch Santiago of the Seas. We're not on a streaming platform yet. Not on Paramount Plus, which I hope that will change soon. There's a couple of episodes that can be watched on YouTube. Some you can download through Amazon. But the support and the views totally help. So yeah, give our show a watch. The preschool and bridge shows that can be fun too.
Yeah, they can. Yeah. And go look at some ghosts.
And go forth and ghost hunt.
go forth and see some spooky shit.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being our guest.
Aw, thank you both so much. This was so much fun.
That's the end of this creative block. Thanks to Niki for being our guest and sharing her story.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to my sister Clemens for editing the podcast.
If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.